Welcome back to First Principles. I'm Rohan Dharmakumar. My guest today is Mukesh Bansal, the founder of Myntra, the co-founder of Cult.fit, and these days the person behind the AI company called Nurix and a venture studio called Meraki. I've known Mukesh for over a decade and a half, and he's one of the most genuinely curious and indefatigable founders I know. Someone who keeps walking away from things that are working to go and learn something new. This is part one of our two-part conversation. Here we trace his whole arc: the near-death moment at Myntra, the decision to walk away from Flipkart, how he thinks about pivots, and the small-town Haridwar upbringing that set him off. Part 2 picks up with how he finds talented people, the mental models he runs his life by, and his contrarian takes on health. Let's begin. Mukesh, it's a real pleasure to have you here. You and I have known each other for the better part of a decade. So, this is absolutely one of those conversations where I already carry a picture of you, all the things that you've done. But I'm really curious how it emerges at the end of today's conversation. For anyone listening who doesn't know the arc, Mukesh founded Myntra in 2007 and built it into India's largest fashion platform before selling it to Flipkart in 2014. And then he ran a large part of Flipkart itself. In 2016, he then co-founded Cult.fit and spent the better part of a decade turning health and fitness into a category. These days, he does many things at once. He runs Nurix, an enterprise AI company. He co-leads a venture studio called Meraki. He advises a fashion venture and an edtech one. He's backed companies as far apart as Skyroot and Grow. He hosts a podcast and he's written 3 books. What I want to understand today is the shape of the whole thing more than any specific single company inside it. You've been early to a lot of trends and sectors, and more than once that has imposed costs because there's always a cost to being early. Myntra got acquired by Flipkart during the heights of India's e-commerce boom. Cult ran into the pandemic, which of course no one saw coming. But instead of narrowing, as I see it, you've widened into this diffused constellation of bets. I want to know how that looks from the inside, whether it's restlessness or a system or a conviction that's still evolving. And First Principles already has threads of your story. I had Ankit Nagori, your Cult.fit co-founder, on the show. So we've heard about the Cult founding and split from his side. We've also had Anant Narayanan, who ran Myntra as CEO. And we've had Lalit Keshre, CEO and co-founder of Grow, which is one of your angel investments. So in many ways, it's finally great to complete the picture with you.
Rohan, thanks for having me. Looking forward to this conversation. Where do you want me to start?
Don't worry about it. Let me start. You do a bunch of different things, right? So let me ask a very specific question. What actually are you spending most of your time these days?
So, as you mentioned, my primary job these days is running Meraki Labs, which is a venture studio where we incubate different companies, typically at the pace of about one company a year. And our 2 big incubation currently are this company Nurix AI, which you mentioned, which is in the enterprise AI space, and Fermi, which is trying to reimagine education. So most of my time is split between these 2 companies. And then I still have an active role at Cult.fit where I'm exec chairman. We're working towards our IPO journey. So that takes a remaining portion of my week. So between these 3, I think it ends up consuming most of my time.
Very interesting. So how do you see yourself today? Do you see yourself as an operator, a multiple founder, an investor, an advisor?
See, my honest answer is, Rohan, I see myself as a learner. I do what I do is because I enjoy learning. I think it's very difficult for me to communicate how much I enjoy. And part of, I think, what has taken me to these different ventures and different stages, what you call, sometimes early to different things, it's just curiosity and desire to learn. And that's why I ended up, doing this venture studio, because doing one company over a period of time, I get bored. I feel like, it's this great, your podcast is called First Principles. I would like to think I'm a somewhat of a first principles thinker. And when you get into some new domain, that whole process of understanding how this domain works, what are the rules of the game, who are the move and shakers, it's quite enjoyable journey to figure that out. But once you figure it out, you are just running the treadmill. You're just asking, how do I double this, quadruple this? That has a limited intellectual appeal to me.
Got it. So there is this thing that there is a what's called a 0 to 1 journey, and then there is usually a 1 to 10 journey, and then there is that 10 to 100 journey, right? The 10 to 100 journeys, of
So
course.
look, I'm also not able to slot myself saying that I'm a 0 to 1 specialist, because there is a very different type of learning. Let's say example CureFit. CureFit is a reasonably mature company. We have an established business where we are opening more and more gyms. We open 200 new gyms a year. There, the formula is quite known. There are few things we need to figure out, but mostly what we know what we are doing. But there are new businesses, new ideas. How does a company like CureFit build a second product line, third product line, which in 5 years or 10 years can rival or existing product line? Now that has 0 to 1 elements. In fact, there's additional complexity because you are a now large company, you are accountable to board, you are very watchful about the P&L, so you can't take risk as easily. But that's if your company needs to grow and thrive, it needs to do those things. So there's 0 to 1 element, but also it has obviously, I don't know, CureFit I would call right now, I don't know, 20 to 200, trajectory. So there is that aspect of the job. So I think as long as there's an interesting challenge involved, some novelty, uh, some aspect of accelerated learning, I am usually game for giving it a shot.
Okay, from what you say, you're absolutely saying you love learning, you love curiosity, and that drives you. And you're also saying that it's not scale specific. Sometimes it could happen at the 0 to 1 stage, sometimes it could happen at the 20 to 100 scale. But as long as there is learning, what kind of situations have you been in where you feel that the learning stops?
When you're doing same thing again and again, right? It's learning requires you to be outside your comfort zone. That's very strong prerequisite. Even if in everyday life, let's say we drive around HSR layout and from here to Indranagar, it becomes autopilot. You almost can literally even close your eyes and drive. But when you go to a new city, you're suddenly alert. You have to pay attention to every path you are taking, every shop you notice, and so on. So I think it's a new stimulus. Um, but when you are in that environment where, let's say in a company environment, your product line is very clear, who you're selling to is very clear, all the SOPs are defined, systems are defined, is very hard. And that's where usually learning spikes when there's a crisis. So you mentioned pandemic in CureFit. So we were not established at the time. We were still only 4-year-old company, but things were we kind of knew at least some part of business what we are doing, and suddenly everything comes to a halt. Now learning spikes. I think 2020 was the year of complete reimagination of everything. In hindsight, even that time, I was enjoying it immensely. I have this whole framework of, I call it crisis and momentum. Maybe at some point we'll talk about that. But actually, there was second note I sent to the company. First note I said, never letting a crisis go to waste. So these are past mental models. I'm now around startups for more than 30 years. So I've seen lots of ups and downs, including many types of crisis, and I'm very well aware of that. Crisis always comes wrapped with a massive gift if you're only willing to unpeel the onion and embrace the gift. So I think in pandemic, my first instinct was, uh, here is this crisis, how do we take the most advantage of that? And I kind of rallied the whole company around that. But coming back to that, right? So when that things are very steady, nothing, then I think learning really slows down. And this is why the big companies become risk covers. They have become quite married to, they don't want to upset the apple cart. They don't want to disturb what's already working. But then people's pace of learning and growth also slows down.
Got it. So all of these things that you're doing, incubating your own companies, being an investor in others, being on the boards of others which are running in the run up to the IPO, how do you decide how to allocate your time across this?
See, first of all, it appears more than what I'm doing. If I boil down to what I'm, nearly 100% of my time right now is going into running Nurix, where I play the lead role, of Fermi, where I have a co-founder role, but I focus only on the product side of things. I'm not worried about who we are selling to, what is the size of business zone. I just want to build a stellar education product. And I would like to believe one of my core skill set is product, and maybe come back to later. And then third is thinking about CureFit. CureFit, my role is now evolved to what happens to CureFit from year 1 to year 5. The current operating team is very, very strong. They, whatever is going to happen next 12 months, they manage. What is going to happen 12 months to 60 months is something where I apply my kind of intellectual bandwidth to. And that's really so. Yeah, and plus, look, similar to yourself, I've been now around the block for a long period of time. I have my own methods and mental models to get leverage on my time. So I feel like my 1 hour today is not same as my 1 hour 10 years ago. I can do a lot more than. So between these 3 jobs and everything else is, once a month or once a quarter, it hardly takes any time.
All right. So I'll sort of kind of double down on that. You said an hour of your time today is very different from an hour of your time. In what sense?
There are 2 levels to answer. I think there is, now I need to give a AI plus answer also. But even if let's go back 1 year, it's the 3-4 dimensions to this. One is leverage. Say 10 years ago, it was very hard for me to hire very high caliber people. So I will not get leverage. I had made lot less mistakes by that time compared to now. So today, if you give me a situation and you want me to make a decision, my probability of making a better decision is dramatically higher, because I've seen, I can pattern match very easily on all the things I've seen, what has worked, what has not worked. Now, for same 1 hour, if let's say in the past my probability of a right decision was 20%, maybe it's 50% now. So it's in that hour same amount of work, but downstream, wrong decision, I may waste months of my time, lots of capital, other people time, which I'm saving. So that's one kind of leverage. Uh, See, in a leadership role and a co-founder role, communication is also very, very important. And in most situations, especially in startups, I see like most people are just roiling in ambiguity. There's a lot of confusion. You can't, any given situation, you can't make head or tail out of that. But having been around so many startups in so many different avatars and seen ups and downs so many times, again, I'm able to process like vague information and organize it to get some clarity in my head, provide clarity to other people. So this is like one type of effectiveness in that hour. But second type now, which is AI accelerated, and this is maybe I'll give a longer answer now here. I feel what it means to be a professional is going through a dramatic shift. And you roughly, I'll put all professionals into 3 categories. One category of professionals is people who are just joining the workforce. Now, at some level, they're AI native, they're very comfortable with AI, but they lack the experience. They have not gone through the apprenticeship that is required in your 20s. So they often don't know what is right, what is wrong, what kind of patterns work. They definitely don't have
They
domain
haven't
knowledge.
gotten enough time to make the mistakes.
They don't have enough time to make the mistakes, right? So they are somewhat of a disadvantage. Second category, people who have, let's say, 20 years of experience, but they have lost the ability to be hands-on. They cannot open a Word document and write a document. They cannot, because they are now used to their middle manager or senior manager, and other people do the work. So they just, all they can do is talk or write emails. They're also a huge handicap. There's third category, you have 20 plus years of experience and you are not afraid of being hands-on. And there in your hands, AI is a superpower. And I think I am able to unlock that for myself in a dramatic manner, to an extent where, Rohin, about 6 months ago, even 6 to 9 months ago, I was also dependent on other people. Like whatever, I had good ideas and communication skills, but that's where it'll stop. But now I pretty much do first version of anything I want to do, I do myself. So whether it's building if I have a new idea for Meraki Labs, I build the product end to end and give to like decent V1. And by decent V1, I don't mean a wireframe or a mock-up or something, you
But
can just
actually
try
working code.
something actually working code where you can take payments if you want to, and you can, have few hundred concurrent users, and which is what AI is enabled. If I have to research about something, again, AI is my go-to tool. And my workflows have improved so much now that I have any given time probably 8 to 10 agents I'm working with, and they work 24/7. Like one of the most important thing I do is, before going to bed, making sure all those agents have enough work for the night. And the morning also, first thing I do is go and just check that. Literally, my I go to each window, status question mark, status question mark, status question mark, and they tell me whatever to do. And sometimes
What are these agents? Are these OpenClaw agents? Are these connected to specific
I mostly my go-to tool is just so I use a
Claude?
terminal called Warp. It has an agentic interface, and I run Claude CLI in that. So pretty much all the work is done
Got
by
it. So the
Claude.
backend model is Claude.
Correct. Yeah.
Got it.
But so backend model is Claude, but I use Claude mostly to write code, and the code it writes, it's the way it is configured. It can use any model. So the code can invoke, Anthropic models, Google models, bunch of open source models. So most of my work gets done through variety of models, but the primary code I'm writing to get the work done is through Claude.
Got it. And all this running in the cloud, or do you have one of like a
Both. I have a like, pretty hefty
Mac Pro or something?
Mac Pro
running?
as well. It goes with me everywhere. People see me walking into office, my laptop like just like yours is all open because I don't want to
You
close
don't
the
wanna
agent
close
side, and
it.
then because some process may get killed and I have to restart and I lose a half hour of work. So, but that's an example. I think AI has unleashed this insane productivity for people who are willing to embrace it. It requires you to become hands-on. Like I'll give you one more example. I'm primarily, while I'm doing Nurix, which is an enterprise company, but I'm mostly a consumer guy, and consumer guy user interface is a very important thing. And in the past, my workflow has always been that I'm a product manager, you are a designer. I'll try to communicate whiteboard, and you do. Now I do all my design myself, and I'm not able to get as good output that between me and Claude that I'm able to get versus me and a designer. So again, it is, the cycle is just compressed. Like I have an idea, this, I can do a brand design, logo design, visual interface design, all matter of hours. That is a productivity that was, inaccessible going
I
back 1 year ago.
completely agree. There are two interesting tensions here, and I want you to answer both. The first tension was for most knowledge professionals, especially in tech, there used to be two career paths earlier.
Yeah.
One was the people manager career path, which was always, in some senses, especially in India, the more prestigious career path. Right. And then there was the IC individual contributor role, which internationally in tech organization was a respected role, but in India it was not as much. It was always more prestigious to become a people manager role, right? And from your telling, what you're really saying is that if you were on an IC track where you were hands-on, that's the path that allows you to supercharge yourself with AI, as opposed to, and of course I'm simplifying, being the people manager.
No, 100%. I'm saying I'm making a even stronger point. I'm saying if you're only a people manager, watch out. It's see, earlier we needed people manager because we had all these hierarchies, and some level the work is done by people in their 20s, and then there's other people need to manage the chain of command, communication, align everyone. But today I think that requirement is a lot less. I feel the future professional is nearly everyone hands-on. So I don't know, the companies will need that many people manager. Even if they need, it will be very flattish. A few people manager may be okay, but most people, I think, if they want to be really productive and really contribute, they'll have to be hands-on.
Got it. The second tension that I have is the typical founder evolution tension, which is most founders start by being very hands-on, generalists, rolling their sleeves up, getting involved with everything. And then as their organizations grow and as they grow, they learn, or they're forced to told how to delegate and how to step back and how to, in some senses, let others do the work. You sort of hinted at that yourself also, that now you have access to many more skilled colleagues who can take on. And in comes AI. Where in some senses it is reversing this path, because now this arc of founders not doing things hands-on and not getting involved and stepping back and delegating gets reversed, because founders suddenly realize that they have almost like superpowers.
That's right.
So what happens to this, and what does it do to organizations when founders decide that I can do more things myself?
I have a slightly extreme point of view on this. I really think the nature of work is going through fundamental redesign. Now, whether it's for a founder or a CEO of established company or a senior management or people entering workforce, this is the first time you can hire something equivalent to human cognition for cents an hour. And most working professional can afford to hire few cents an hour, few dollars an hour, few tens of dollars an hour. And that's an incredible amount of this cognition equivalent capability in your hands, and not using it is almost wasteful. Like, why will you not? Why will you not mobile phone for car? For communication if you have mobile phone available and so on. So this is like dramatically different level of technology. So as a result, everyone, including founders, need to reinvent. So I was reading an article recently that there is a say in Silicon Valley, the founder persona is someone in their mid 20s, early 30s, right? And that was the archetype. But there's a resurgence of founders in their late 40s, 50s, because now they match this profile, that they have founder capabilities in terms of spotting a new opportunity, articulating their thought process, thinking of possible MVP product, and they have the superpower to be able to build.
And they're no longer limited by that. I'm looking for a tech co-founder
Exactly.
equivalent.
Absolutely. And I think that will fully go away. Some tech grounding is useful, though people who are from pure business background, they probably have if they apply themselves and go through a 6 month of learning curve, ultimately when it doesn't matter how complex things you're building with AI, you are conversing in natural language, which almost anyone can do, well. So I think that need for tech co-founder will go away. I don't think that trajectory that you articulated, that at some point founders need to learn to let go. I don't think that mental model applies. Even if you go back historically, some of the really good founder always remain hands-on. Zuckerberg has always been very hands-on in architecture of what they build at Meta. Airbnb founders were very hands-on with the design. Everything they will approve, and because they wanted to maintain the taste that Airbnb was known for. So a lot of good yeah, I think many examples coming to mind, but Elon Musk, obviously, he's at some level very hands-on. He gets like very, very deep into operations, and it doesn't matter what scale of the enterprise he is dealing with. So I think that's founders have an opportunity to maintain that trait, which made them good founders to begin with.
Which is what's now called founder mode.
Founder, yeah.
Which was in some senses
Right.
based on Airbnb founders,
Right.
The way of working, etc. Let me take a step back. What is Nurix AI and what is Fermi AI?
Yeah. So Nurix, the genesis of Nurix was this idea, in some ways linked to the conversation we are having. So in 2023, when these GPT models are coming out and you start playing with it, I realized that it is going to have profound impact on how work happens. Then I start thinking about how will things change. At some point in my head, it started to become clear that as these models get more and more powerful, the companies will have to reimagine their existing workflows, existing process, how work happens. But that is going to be very complex work. Now, historically, that work is done by the likes of consulting companies or IT services companies. But I also felt that the way you will do it will change, because it have to be in some very AI native way of working, AI native workflows and so on. So for me, it seemed like an opportunity that Nurix can go after. We defined our vision as autopilot enterprise or enabling autopilot enterprise. What we do for company, we build bespoke agents. And we said these agents can do automate any range of work in your organization. We start with voice agents, but now we are diversifying to pretty much any kind of agentic workflow we can build for various enterprises. So that's Nurix. For me,
And how big is Nurix today?
we are just about $10 million revenue scale, just over 2 years. We recently finished an acquisition. I would say still in the 0 to 10 parlance, probably at 2 or something. Still have long, all the buildings ahead of us. But we are starting to find some foothold, which is what, you'll hope for in first couple of years. And
Fermi AI is a newer company.
Fermi is newer company. We just started. It's about 9 months old now. And for me, we are trying to reimagine education. Again, I'll tell you the origin story. See, about last year, I could see it with, first with actually my own learning. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm just always learning something or other. Uh, this, is crazy how often I go to GPT, and slowly I start building these workflows that I want to learn X, create a study plan for me, organize my modules, organize this. I want you to test me after each thing, or create a quiz and so on. And over a period of time, I had this whole better method of learning where I could keep track of what I'm learning, where I am in that, have an interactive discussion with AI. I could see my kids start using AI, and then I start hearing from other people that pretty much whatever happens, kids just go to AI. In fact, then they start using AI in a very bad way also. AI, do my homework for me, which it became very good. And, few of these companies came out of Bay Area, which are, we help you cheat. And they got funded, massively. So again, it kind of became clear to me that AI is going to have profound impact in education. It's like already having profound impact, but some of it's good, some is bad. And schools and colleges are completely cut out of loop. They have no idea how to, rein in this monster, which is becoming go-to thing for all students. At some point for teachers also. The teacher are using AI to generate homework, perhaps using AI to also evaluate homework, and schools just don't know what is going on both ends. So what Fermi is trying to do is in some ways give schools control back of the how AI is being used in education. There's two parts to it. One is we are creating some original content, but which is designed to be used with AI, and there's AI tutor. And the whole AI tutor is designed in a way it almost never gives you answer. It's like very Socratic style of AI tutor. So whatever, when you start a session with it, it will say, "Great, let's talk about it. What do you know about this?" You answer something, and it'll slowly, it'll try to keep on the edge of what you know, and try to get you to answer what you don't know just on the adjacent possible
How would
stage.
you explain it's loosely based on the Socratic method? What's your take on the Socratic method? How would you explain it to a listener?
All good teachers intuitively know that if you talk to a good teacher, student asks a good teacher. My kids have had a, let's say, math and physics teacher. The good teacher will always ask back a question. When you go to teacher with clarification saying, "I am stuck with this problem, I don't understand, what to do," they will not say, "Okay, first step is this." They will say, "What have you understood about this problem? What do you think, what is a key idea that problem is trying to get to, or what is the equation that comes to your mind?" You say something, you may say something right or something wrong. And if you say end up saying something wrong, teacher also has some sense of what you already know. So it'll nudge you in the direction, it will give you small helpful hints, but not giving you answer. Unlike, when you go to GPT, it pretty much dumps the answer quickly. So that's the idea of, just going, enabling this back and forth conversation and limiting amount of information the tutor is giving to the student. But the way school comes in this picture is, now imagine you're solving a problem with this tutor. So your entire session log is kept. The AI would have understood you as a student, what you know and where you need help. You have solved the problem, but I can say you needed about 10% of help, or you need 50% of help. And you are good in these concepts, you are not good at these concepts. Now, as a teacher, I can get that analysis, and I can factor in that analysis to how I am addressing the class next time. I can also see a class-wide cohort of, usually people struggle on this part of math, but this part was okay, so I can refresh that and so on.
Got it. All right. Let me pull back to Myntra.
Yeah.
When you started Myntra, one of the early, I think, observations and discoveries that you had, if I'm not mistaken, when you were roaming around the mall, was that, look, there is all these shops that are there. They have all this inventory, and it's not moving as fast. One of the other ones was, instead of focusing on discounting and older season stock, Myntra in the early days was about, look, this is fresh season, undiscounted. Now, obviously, a lot of water has flown, under the fashion bridge since then. When you look at the fashion space today, what do you see? What is it in India today? And I'm not asking you specifically about just Myntra, but about the fashion space.
I think so first is, I think more or less the hypothesis that we had in Myntra has kind of panned out, multiple levels. And one is, the hypothesis was that we lack the physical infrastructure, and or the offline retail development will never match, what we have in the West. So big portion of fashion consumption will happen at home. For that to happen, you'll have to solve for reverse logistics, because fashion no one can just buy and use. You have to be able to return it. So which is, by and large solved, the trust is there and so on. A big portion of fashion consumption has moved online. One thing that I would say we probably did not anticipate is, to a large extent, online has become a liquidation channel for brands.
That's the reason why I mentioned.
So, the brand, it's, say, overall e-commerce in general and fashion as well has attracted so much capital over last 15 years. And a lot of this capital has gone into market creation through subsidy and so on. But that has created certain behavior pattern among users that very difficult to walk them away. So I was thinking
the discount seeking mentality.
Discount seeking, right? So overall ecosystem is kind of now stabilized at new equilibrium, where during the season brands sell as much as they can offline, and they make, pretty much, the margins are insane. You will be selling stuff at 70-80% margin. But the way fashion business works, you still have half your inventory is unsold, at the end of season. And in the past, and US has a very sophisticated method around this, all the factory outlets and whatnot. But India, again, that infrastructure doesn't exist. So online has become a mechanism to liquidate a lot of inventory. But online is not. So online guys also have to be profitable. Myntra is also profitable now. So they figured out that instead of buying and holding inventory and taking risk on that, let's just do this inventory on consignment model and just charge per transaction. So as a result, if you look at Meesho, it's the ticket price is almost nothing. Yet, they make money on the transaction because they are not carrying inventory. So I think every channel has found its own utility, its need for exists in the market. But just zooming out to now, what's happening in the fashion category, the few things. One is, despite the size of category, we have not seen emergence of homegrown brands. And partly also this very rapid scaling pace has kind of hampered, people's able to build brands. Brands building require a lot of patience. You have to build slowly and you can't be brands are always pull based. I like this brand, I want to buy. If you're building anything push based, then it's because it's a more commodity. It doesn't matter which one I'm buying. I'm just seeking best valued thing. So if you talk to me in 2014-15, I would have said, by now India will have multiple $500 million brand. I don't think there's any. It'll be very few 1,000 crore brands, including the brands that Myntra built. They all at some level has become mostly liquidation type of brands or just very value brands, not brands where you can command some kind of premium and hold their pricing power. And same for the larger ecosystem. Other trend that's kind of playing out, and which is the genesis behind the first company we incubated at Meraki Labs, is called Koyu. And this is in the premium fashion space, but premium e-commerce in general. So what
This is distinct from Lyskraft?
Lyskraft is so Lyskraft is the company. Koyu is their brand name.
God, you and Piyush are co-founders.
No.
Sorry.
Piyush and I co-founded Meraki Labs.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
Mohit Gupta, I
that's
started
right, Mohit.
Koyu.
That's
Mohit runs it day to day. He has the
Right.
majority role there, and I think companies are making good strides. But what Koyu is playing in this larger thesis of what about consumption of top 10, 15 million households, which have lion's shares of income. But if you look at all the large scale players, they have abandoned them. Flipkart doesn't service them, Myntra doesn't service them, Ola doesn't service them, Uber doesn't service them. The kind of car these people want to go to airport to and kind of car you get through Ola and Uber. Maybe Uber Black is now a step in that direction. And these people have a pretty reasonable income. And if you look at, they're easily upper middle class or more.
Is this the CRED hypothesis or
It's
the original CRED?
Exactly, CRED hypothesis. So while banks are able to serve these customers through their private banking, so on, but the e-commerce guys, even quick, commerce guys and so on, no one service them. So these people, they will travel internationally, buy in Dubai, Singapore. And so I think that is a one big vacant space. Personally, while, I think I'm involved in Koyu in general, I am personally not very interested in that market anymore. But I think that is for, aspiring entrepreneurs who want to create something new. I think it's by and large, vacant. There is, and this user base will grow. I think what you call the CRED hypothesis, I think is spot on. You may not build Meesho type of business. So somewhere you have to limit your scale ambition. If you want to build a $200 million, 15% EBITDA business, you can build in this category.
Would this be closer in the grocery space to what First Club?
First Club is 100% example of that, right? It's a lot of people want organic groceries, premium groceries, high quality groceries, and so on. But you can't get them easily on Blinkit or Instamart, and that's the gap that First Club is trying to fulfill. And over a period of time, I'm pretty sure we'll see like these kind of players emerge in pretty much all categories.
Got it. Tell me, how did Meraki Labs emerge?
Yeah.
When and how? What thought process led you to say, hey, I need to start an incubation lab of my own, and it's going to be such a limited incubation lab that it'll only do one a year. It
I think
seems not very common.
It's not common at all, and generally it doesn't work also. So there is a good reason to not do it also. It has been, I think...
Assuming you're implying if it's done for commercial reasons. I'm assuming you're funding Meraki Labs, at least in the beginning. And
no,
now
I meant, so formally people call these things venture studios.
Right.
If you look at track record of venture studios as a whole around the globe versus track record of venture funds, while first venture fund also has a pretty poor track record, but on the whole, more people do venture funds, very few people do venture studios, because it's building one company is hard, more than one is, you know, extremely hard. Just you multiply by 10 in levels of difficulty. So why do that? I think it's a culmination of two things for me. One is, I've been now around startups for 30 years, and when Myntra became a fairly large scale company, and I was Flipkart, there was a choice I had to continue Flipkart and kind of play out the compounding for next 10 years. But somewhere it was becoming too much of the same, and I was yearning to try something else, learn something new, which health and fitness at the time provided. Now, CureFit is a leader in this category. There is a very easily be the CEO of CureFit and run it for next 10 years, happily compound. But again, it's just the curiosity part is somewhat limited there. So that's one part, like just my own innate desire to want to get involved in something else. So I've been in some way incubating this thought of Meraki Labs for more than 10 years now. So even when Ankit and I started CureFit, the thought process at that time was also that at some point we'll try to incubate, invest in other companies. And that thought process led to, my investment in Grow in 2017 and Skyroot in 2018. A few others since then. Some of them are not done well. I think one is done well in the sense that they're profitable at small scale. And so for me, all of that was in some ways, not necessarily it was by design, but slowly it was becoming a warmer phase. In my head, I called it Meraki phase 1, where I did about 6 companies. And there also my thought process was very different than a typical angel investment. Typically, if I get angel checks in India, in those days it was like 10, 20 lakhs, maybe now 50 lakhs or a CR kind of angel check, but you do bunch of them. Typically, if you look at the prolific angels in India, they may be deploying 1 million or 2 in a year, but they'll deploy across 15, 20 checks. What I did was, whatever my budget was, I decided to just put in one company, try to have meaningful ownership and tell the founders, look, I'm going to work closely with you to the extent possible given my full-time day job, which I did. I worked pretty closely with Lalit in his first few years. Similarly, Pawan even more so. And usually that help was, I think, more valuable in the tough times because, which are inevitable. So in some ways, I was rehearsing this phase 1. Then in 23, I, got to a point where I could transition to Naresh internally at CureFit to take over as CEO. Naresh and I have worked together now for 12 years. He has done phenomenally. He joined as a business analyst at Myntra and has been just growing non-stop ever since. So I had to, in some ways create space for him, but also create space for myself to other things. So then I thought, what is a vehicle which will allow me to dabble in new areas? Last thing, I was also clear on that I don't want to be a fund manager. I don't enjoy it. I'm fundamentally an operator. I operate and builder. That's what gives me joy. That's why I go to work every day. So what is the mechanism which allows me to look into few different things and yet be a builder and operator? And venture studio is really, by way of elimination is the only answer. And last thing I'll say is venture studio has a lot of built-in capability while built-in flexibility. While we are saying we'll do one company here, we don't have to. Let's say Nurix starts to do well. I can just focus on the next 3-4 years. There is really no accountability to anyone saying, well, unlike a fund, you have to deploy the fund every year. Here, if between me and Piyush, we choose to say, Fermi is looking very promising, Nurix is looking promising, let's build it for next few years until we can have somebody internally grows up into being a CEO, and then we can start our 4th or 5th company can start in 29, 30.
Very interesting. I want to go back to that point that you said about at Flipkart, you had the opportunity to compound for 10 years, but you didn't chose not to. Then at CureFit also, you had the opportunity to compound, but you chose not to. So what I'm actually seeing is a rejection of the compounding.
Not compounding. I love compounding investor. I want my CureFit equity to compound 30% forever. So it's not rejection of compounding. It's a very
no. Sorry, I'll rephrase myself. It's so there is to go back to an earlier stream of thought when there are two paths, like one is the individual contributor path and the other is a people manager path. Like that in careers, there is the dominant stream of thought is that once you enter a sector and you build experience in it and you become better at it, stay in it and build on it and compound on it. Right. As opposed to the generalist or like the eternal 0 to 1 person like you who is comfortable leaving sectoral expertise after 4 or 5 years, moving to a new sector, and then moving. In that sense, that compounding is not happening in the traditional way.
Well, there are two levels of compounding. What I am compounding is my entrepreneur's, knowledge and skills.
What is
And
that?
those are-
Explain me.
First of all, most 0 to 1. So in my third book, The Startup Code, I have a chapter called Why Startups Fail. And I've listed 10 things. And I've seen, I've personally seen, failure up close. I've seen a lot of other startups that, from the sidelines which fail. So now that's a common pattern. That's a learning that has in some ways compounded for me. Now, if I really understand why startups fail and I have some mechanism to avoid, that gives me unfair advantage in Meraki Labs. And that's what in some ways I'm betting on, that I will make less mistakes than a typical startup.
I got it. So you're horizontally compounding
Right,
rather than
exactly.
vertically
I think that's the right
compounding.
way to put it.
Got it. Very interesting. Okay. You've also been over your, like you said, 30 years of being an operator, being an investor, being in venture funded companies. You've been on both sides of the VC and valuation game over these years, right? What are some of your biggest lessons and advice for founders around taking venture capital and valuations?
I think it boils down to a fundamental choice an entrepreneur needs to make, which is the size of the ambition and the time frame. If you look at traditional business houses in India, they pretty much own everything, or they may dilute 20%, 30% at a very, very late stage. But these guys have built these businesses over generations. So one is that path, you take a business, you just grow it organically, take it to a certain stage over 20, 30 years, get, other people from family.
You grow slowly but maintain control.
Control, right? So that was one way. And today, at least, I never had that kind of patience. I want to build companies which are hopefully built to last, but I don't want to give my entire life to one company. It's so. Uh, so if you're clear about that, then venture capital gives you the trade-off between, how much capital you want to raise, and there also it's not a binary. You have a lot of entrepreneurs are very frugal about the money they raise. They deliberately raise as little money as possible, dilute as little. Some people say, I just care about the outcome. I need to build a $10 billion company. I don't care where, I own 1% or 5%, and you end up owning 1 or 5% only. It doesn't, at the time, it's unrecognizable whether, you are a founder or not. So I think that choice is available. Other thing is, my modus operandi has been, I've really never ever paid attention to valuation. I think that's doesn't work in practice. It doesn't lead to anything by thinking about valuation. Ultimately, it's, or three things you have to care in that order. For me, first thing is always, do people love your product? Otherwise, you're not in the game. And today also, like what I'm building, I'm like, my team keep asking me, what is our GTM plan? I think, I don't know. I don't want to know. You tell me, like, why will people love our product? I am only interested in that discussion. Once there is an evidence that people love your product, it is differentiated, what it is standing on, then you start scale question. Okay, now I know I've got my 1,000 true fans. How do I get my 100,000 true fans? How do we scale it now? And how much capital I have to scale? And you modulate that. Other thing I try to balance. Because I've had this near death experience few times, I'm very scared of short runway. So
one of your near-death experiences was Myntra.
As Myntra 2013, there's a time where I had to make some frenetic calls in in November last week, because otherwise we couldn't have made payroll and would have to. We already had a layoff in June, but that was just about 10-15% layoff. This would have been like 70% layoff situation.
And which was the other one?
Cult.fit, pandemic, again, if your revenue goes from nearly 100 million to zero, while all the costs stay as it is, so it's as good as death. A lot of companies did not survive pandemic, and the biggest uncertainty was you don't know, you have to survive 6 months or 6 years. It turned out to be about 2 years. So I think that's I would say so. So runway is very important to factor in the how fast you want to scale, and the third is profitability. Like a way I process the profitability question is your unit economics positive? All the other costs don't matter. There's a lot of flexibility. You can have 100 people as a horizontal cost, or you can have 10 people. It doesn't matter. They're all building stuff for future. But so while I have not done that in the e-commerce days, because the capital was really available freely, but if it wasn't, we would have, even if you do Pareto of, let's say we go back to bad year of Myntra, there is always 20-30% of catalog where your contribution margins were very positive. So other 70% you wanted to, try to scale market share or whatnot. So coming back to, so those are three things I care in that order. Do people love our product? Do I have the able to scale? And is my unit economics positive? And then the net EBITDA depends on capital and the market size, whether it's very competitive. At CureFit, if you were to ask me like, why are you growing 30%? Why not 70%? Because I don't need to grow 70%. There's no one who is threatening us to take market share away from us. Market is growing 15%. We are organizing the market so we can get faster pace than that. But if it was, two-player situation, three-player situation, then I need to factor in dynamic, because the guy who's growing faster will get more capital and will create, some unfair advantage. So I don't have to worry about that.
Got it. Okay, let me switch tracks. What's your family history and how did you end up as an entrepreneur?
I grew up in Haridwar, a small town. My father was working for BHEL, so he worked in BHEL is not, I guess, yeah, it's kind of semi-government. It's an autonomous but government-owned entity. So I grew up, in
Bharat
this
Heavy Electricals
Bharat
Limited.
Heavy Electricals Limited, and a lot of these, there's so-called Navratna
Navratna.
companies in India. They actually have a very nice campus, where whether you go to Bokaro Steel City or BHL and different campus, so you'll have all the facilities are provided by the organization. You have free school, you have free hospital, you have parks, you have decent road, which is you step out of that and if you try to imagine Haridwar in 80s 90s, what infrastructure didn't exist. Yet in these small town, there's industrial towns, you had pretty much all the infrastructure. So that was I feel very privileged now looking back, having grown up in the environment. While my father had a very modest job, but the environment was in by all accounts pretty healthy and nurturing in some ways. So that's where I studied. I went to IIT Kanpur for my undergrad studies, where I studied CS. Uh, in my father's generation, there is absolutely no entrepreneurship. Not on my father's side, not on my mother's side. But we are like by uh, the history of entrepreneurship. Through if you go back multiple generations in my family, they tell a story about. I think my father's father generation, there was massive losses. This that everyone kind of decided business is a bad thing. Just stay away from this. Service is where you go. So this is, I would say, probably in 60s 70s, when my father's generation was coming of age, so everyone nearly found some job depending upon their education qualification. Some got a really good job, some modest job. So I had almost no exposure to, no desire for, no ambition for entrepreneurship. It changed for me in college. So and you may again you may see a new a familiar pattern here. I was pretty gung ho about studying the first 2 years. I got excellent grades, everything. But by end of 2 year, I started getting disillusioned with studies, and just dabbling with other things, and spending a lot of time playing a lot of sports, as well as spending a lot of time in library. And that's where I discovered this whole non-fiction genre. And first few books I picked up are books like Seven Great Habits, and Lee Iacocca's book, and Sam Walton's book Made in America, and think Akio Morita's book. I think it's called also Made in Japan. And those stories had a profound impact on me. I was like, wow, these guys in their lifetime start with thought process and idea and build a whole company. This was, I would say, through third and fourth year, and by the time I think I was kind of quite set that I want to build something. So before I graduated, that was clear, and which also kind of played out once I joined a large consulting job, which I hated. But in 99, when I was 23 year old, I moved from Chicago to Bay Area, tried to start a company. And since then, I've been on this treadmill.
Very interesting. Now, again, slightly switching tracks. You started and pivoted so many companies over the years, and I think pivots are one of the most
Yeah.
misunderstood concepts, right? In startups, because frankly, it's only with the benefit of hindsight that someone can come to say that was a right pivot, or that was a premature pivot,
That's
or
right.
that was a bad pivot,
Yeah.
right? Do you have a mental model when you're advising it, like younger founders on when to hold, when to pivot, when to shut down?
First, I'll say, first of all, I will use the word adjustment rather than pivot. It's like, you come to work every day, you're like playing a chess. Like, my next move is dependent on what move you are playing. Now, in this case, you could be, what is the investor sentiment out there? What is the competitor dynamic? How are my customer reacting to my product? They may love it, they may hate it. So every day you're processing all available information and coming to the best possible move. Now, sometimes your best possible move may be just you move your pawn from one dull box to another dull box. That's a great move. That's a tiny adjustment. Someday you may want to just castle, your king and rook. It's a major. You are completely changing the board. So I think the pivots or adjustment part and parcel of it. No one knows the answer on day one. It's impossible. Like nobody, it doesn't matter who is building a company. On day one, you don't know the answer. I don't think you even know the answer 6 months or 12 months. But you make a lot of these moves, and sometimes you might make a dramatic move. So a good pivot is like, say, if I analyze a Myntra pivot, which happened after 4 years in some ways. So we had two things by that time. We're, if I can say, a terrible category of personalization, which
Gifting and
gifting, right?
personalization.
Which is a very tiny market, but we were a pretty good e-commerce company by that time. So did we pivot from category A, very bad category, to a good category with a large TAM? Yes. But did we pivot as a company? No. By that time, in India, not many people knew how to build a website, first of all, how to take orders online, how to process credit cards, how to package, your order in a warehouse and ship it to wherever you are, and so on. So in some ways, we adjusted one major parameter of what we are selling. But also so that's how all pivots are. Like what strengths you have. Even if pivot does not mean that I wipe the slate clean, I throw away my code, I shut down the category, I fire most of people, then that's you're starting a new company. I will not call that a pivot.
So, in the evolution of a company, there is this fine line between belief and conviction
Yeah.
and discovery and product market fit.
Right.
In some senses, as founders or as the company, there has to be a certain belief that we want to be this.
Yeah.
But like you said earlier in the conversation, when some of your colleagues at Meraki ask you, what's our GTM plan? And you're like, I don't know. We'll see when.
Yeah.
So that is open to the possibilities of discovery.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
there is this fine line between you believe in the future, yet you're open to
That's right.
seeing what the
Yeah.
future reveals it. How
Right.
do you?
I think it's more than 5 lines. So my mental model in this, Rohin, is I want to be convinced about the mega trend. So even if let's go back to 2010, 11, and now some of it is hindsight. I'm not claiming I had that much foresight at that time. But intuitive somewhere, I was betting on the mega trend that huge number of people will buy stuff online. Now it was a matter of just executing well. So in 2016, this was more deliberate. I believe that people will value their health and they'll invest in their health, and that mega trend is just going to go up, 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 and this is how it has played out. And I think next decade, so CureFit can now choose to execute well or not execute well. But what is a given that health is a mega trend? Similar Nurix, I'm convinced, I can take any amount of bet with you that 10 years from now, the way work happens in enterprise will dramatically different. In that process,
I have
lot
no
of people,
arguments. I'm not taking
right?
that bet.
And lot of people will make, amazing companies. So that's the bet I'm taking. So my 10-year belief is very, very clear. And what I'm doing today is also very clear. I want to build a product that people love. But I don't know what step comes after this. So it's like a zigzag path. I want to get there because a lot of people will get there. That's almost a given. I'm starting here. But I'm going to keep figuring out my moves. Maybe I'll go this way. So in case of Nurix, right now we're focused on retail as a category. But maybe tomorrow we'll focus more on BFS as a category. There's a choice to make. Are you more mid-market? Are you more, larger enterprise? Are you more platform? Are you more services? I don't know. Those are adjustments I can keep making. But what I'm doing today is clear, and where I'm going long term is clear.
Got it. Going back to the US, you were there in 1999. You moved to the Bay Area to start your own company. Obviously, it didn't pan out.
Right.
What was the series of steps that brought you back to India?
Right. So this was, I think, the first half of 99 is when I tried to start a company.
.com
It was
bust
kind of
hadn't happened.
Bust hadn't happened. It was a year before. Bay Area was buzzing at that time. It was electric to be in that atmosphere. And you can't, if you're in the atmosphere, like people are saying everybody and their mom and dog is building a startup, those kind of days. But anyhow, for 6 months, I tried something. But me and my co-founder were, just absolutely clueless. We were just, while we said we were trying to build a company, we were flailing around. And after doing that for 6 months, they gave up. But I realized at the time, I don't know how to do a startup. I want to learn how to do a startup. So I'm going to work for very early stage. So I kind of stayed true to that commitment. And for next 8 years, I deliberately joined companies which are less than 10 people. So one case, there were only 4 people. And that was a great ringside view of what it takes to build a startup. Now, like all typical startup, these startups made tons of mistakes. Out of one had a pretty good, near $1 billion exit. One had a more, just salvage, kind of exit for $100 million, and 2 died. So I got a pretty good view of the entire startup life cycle, all the dynamics, founder dynamics, investor dynamics, how you hire people, how to pivot, how to, and a bunch of those things. So that was like my very long 8-year MBA into world of startups.
I see the similar parallels to what you said in the past. This is again an attempt to build horizontal compounding rather than vertical compounding. If you could go back then, and I know there's a certain benefit of hindsight, because I can easily imagine someone young coming from a middle class, family who studied at an IIT in CS, is in the US, is in the Bay Area, sees that as an opportunity to quote unquote settle down there and do not rock the boat. Right.
So that, the two. So one is, I think I will say this partly, I've been very comfortable backing my convictions. So I told you, like, when I decided in 4th year that I'm going to be an entrepreneur, it was kind of almost, fait accompli, that I'm going to try. Right. Similarly, for Meraki Labs, I think about 10 years ago, I decided that I am going to build a venture studio kind of startup, because whether it's work or not work, it's not my control. So starting in 99 decision was taken a long time ago. Similarly, when in 99 decided, I really am going to figure it out. So there's almost nothing can you stop me. Now, how did the India move happen? 2 things. One is, I'm like hardcore desi at heart. Like, I'm probably one of the few people who has, after spending 10 years in US, my accent did not change even one bit. Usually you can tell after 2 or 3 years, right? I would just eat Indian food. I will, a few other things. Okay, I started watching Hollywood movies, but a few changes, but by and large, so I never felt at home. That's one. Second, my last 2 startups, I was involved in setting up India development office. So from 2004 to 2007, I used to come back here almost every quarter. And I could see this, energy in Bangalore, which is similar to energy, I was seeing in Bay Area in 99. And there, if you remember the India Shining campaign, I kind of, drank that Kool-Aid also. And somewhere I felt like India is about to take off in some ways. And so not really fitting in US and wanting to participate in a kind of India takeoff story is what convinced me in 2007 to move back.
If you've been a long-time listener to this podcast and are glad we're back, do tell the world by sharing this episode with everyone you think will find it valuable. This is me, Rohin Dharmakumar, signing off. We'll be back soon with another episode.